Ravenna took a milk bath every day to maintain her youth. She even gave the milk bath water to the poor. She was the queen of the country, which was ruled by King Magnus a few years ago. Queen Eleanor enjoyed the winter bloom of roses in the snowy landscape. Queen Eleanor gave birth to a daughter, Snow White, who grew up as a happy girl. However, the good times did not last long. Queen Eleanor suddenly fell ill and passed away. King Magnus was devastated. At this time, the army of glass attacked the territory, and King Magnus led his army to fight bravely on the battlefield. King Magnus easily repelled the army of glass, and found the prisoner Ravenna, whom he married and made her queen. Ravenna was crowned as the queen, and Snow White became her stepdaughter. However, on their wedding night, Ravenna controlled King Magnus and killed him. It turned out that Ravenna was a witch, who created the army of glass, and all of this was her conspiracy. After King Magnus' death, Ravenna opened the city gates and let the enemy troops attack under Ravenna's rule. Most of the royal family members were killed, and only a few escaped. Snow White was imprisoned, and the palace was controlled by Ravenna. For Ravenna, eternal beauty meant eternal power. Every morning, she took a milk bath, and gave the milk to the poor. She also had soldiers carry a strange object into her bedroom, which turned out to be a mirror. Every night, Ravenna would ask the mirror who was the fairest of them all, and the mirror's answer satisfied her. Ravenna consolidated her position, but she was not satisfied, and continued to expand her territory, conquering multiple countries. However, when she was about to unify the entire kingdom, her beauty began to fade. To maintain her youth, Ravenna used cruel magic to absorb the vitality of young women. Ravenna asked the mirror if there was any way to break this fate. The mirror told her that the only way was to kill Snow White and absorb her life essence. Only then could Ravenna permanently rule the kingdom. Therefore, Ravenna ordered Finn to bring Snow White to her. However, when Finn saw Snow White's beauty, he was also mesmerized by her and had evil thoughts. Snow White seized the chance to stab Finn, and successfully escaped from prison. Snow White saw a white horse at the door, and rode it into the dark forest. The soldiers stopped at the entrance of the forest because they were afraid of the strange things inside. Ravenna heard that hunter Eric was familiar with the forest, so she promised to resurrect his wife in exchange for his help in capturing Snow White. With Eric's guidance, they quickly found Snow White. However, when Eric caught Snow White, she told him the truth. Eric was angry and knocked Finn and others to the ground. Eric and Snow White were preparing to leave the forest, but the dangers of the forest were everywhere. They disturbed a huge troll that was sleeping, and the troll smashed a tree stump with one punch. Eric's attacks had no effect on the troll, and the troll knocked Eric away and prepared to kill him. At this moment, Snow White stepped forward. When the troll saw her, it became gentle and eventually left. They sat down to rest, but suddenly, they were attacked again. Eight dwarves suddenly attacked them, but when they saw Snow White, they spared the two intruders. Shortly after, Ravenna sent troops to track them down into the forest. The dwarves led Snow White and Eric to their home. In this dark forest, there was a paradise where plants thrived and creatures were strange. Snow White was fascinated by the scenery here. They spent a safe night here. The next day, when Snow White woke up, she saw two fairies appearing in front of her. The fairies seemed to take Snow White somewhere. They saw a noble and sacred deer, which was the guardian of this forest. This deer not only let Snow White touch its head, but also bowed to her. It turned out that Snow White was the legendary Mother of Life, and she could bring life to the earth. Only Snow White could heal this land that was invaded by darkness. Suddenly, the god deer was shot by an arrow. Ravenna's army chased after them, and the animals in the forest were frightened and fled. The god deer also transformed into a butterfly and flew away. The dwarves rushed up to stop the army, and Eric led Snow White to escape. While they were running away, they encountered Finn, and the two began to fight. At first, Eric couldn't defeat Finn, but he found an opportunity to kill him. On the other side, because Ravenna hadn't absorbed Snow White's life essence, her beauty quickly faded. She decided to take matters into her own hands. Snow White met William in the forest, and he handed her an apple. Snow White took a bite without any precautions. However, it was a poisoned apple, and Snow White was in great pain. William's face began to twist. It turned out that William was Ravenna in disguise, and she wanted to kill her. In a critical moment, Eric arrived in time and attacked Ravenna. Ravenna transformed into a crow and fled. In order to restore her life essence, Ravenna drained the lives of more than a dozen young women. Snow White was deeply poisoned, and closed her eyes. Everyone around her thought she was dead. William couldn't help but kiss her, but Snow White didn't wake up as in the fairy tale. William brought Snow White back to the castle, where all the members of the royal family who had escaped were gathered. Everyone thought Snow White was dead. Eric said goodbye to Snow White and wept, then kissed her. Surprisingly, Snow White woke up from this kiss. Everyone felt that Snow White was sent by God to save them. Snow White said she wanted to reclaim their kingdom, and everyone supported her. Snow White led her army into Ravenna's castle, and engaged in a fierce battle. They finally entered the palace and came to Ravenna. Ravenna was not afraid and only lowered her head. Countless spikes fell from the ceiling and formed into humanoid soldiers, attacking Snow White and her army. Ravenna grabbed Snow White and made her watch as the soldiers and William were killed, leaving only Eric resisting desperately. Ravenna was arrogant, and didn't see Snow White as a threat. In the end, Snow White took the opportunity to stab Ravenna in the chest with a sword. The humanoid soldiers collapsed instantly, and Ravenna's magic disappeared. Her appearance quickly aged, and she died. At the end of the story, Snow White became the new queen, bringing light and vitality. The withered trees bloomed again, and the earth was full of vitality, bringing new hope and future to the entire kingdom.